While I was waiting for my appointment, a nurse approached me and said, "Your daughter is ready to be discharged." I was about to tell her I didn't have a daughter, but then I saw the teenage girl standing right behind her, staring right at me with wide, terrified eyes and her hands together like she was praying. She was mouthing the words, "Please say yes." Her whole body was trembling, but something in her eyes made me trust her. "Yes, sorry," I said quickly, standing up. "Let's go, honey." The nurse smiled and handed me a clipboard. She had a severe allergic reaction, but she's stable now. "Just sign here, Mrs. Kessler." I signed the fake name while the girl stayed close, her hand gripping my arm so tightly I could feel her shaking. "You can take her home now," the nurse said. Her father called earlier and said he was on his way if you needed to leave, but I told him you were already here. The girl's face went pale. Her fingers dug into my arm until it hurt. As soon as the nurse walked away, she whispered urgently, "We need to go right now, before he gets here." We hurried toward the exit, and I asked, "Who's coming for you?" "I'm in foster care," she said breathlessly, walking fast beside me. "But they're not a real foster family." "What do you mean?" We pushed through the main doors into the parking lot. There are 6 teenage girls in the house. They make us do online work for 12 hours every day. We're not allowed to stop. Her voice trembled as we weaved between cars. I looked at her more closely. She couldn't have been more than 15 or 16. "We need to call the police," I said. She shook her head hard. "I tried calling my caseworker last week. He found out." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a dark bruise wrapping around her upper arm. "He locked me in the basement for 3 days. My stomach dropped. "Who did this to you?" "My foster dad. But he works for the foster system. He's a placement coordinator. Nobody believes us because he knows how to make everything look legal." We were nearing my car in the far corner of the lot. "What happened today?" "Why were you at the hospital?" "They make us take sleeping pills every night so we don't cause trouble. But I'm allergic to something in them. My throat started closing up this morning, so they had to bring me here." I gave them a fake name. "And when I saw you in the waiting room, I just took a chance. I pointed at you and said you were my mom." "That was smart," I said, fumbling for my keys. Suddenly, she froze. Her hand gripped mine tightly, and she pointed across the lot. "That's his car. He's already here." A silver Honda sat 3 rows away, empty. My heart started pounding. If his car's here, that means he's inside the hospital looking for you. "We have to move now." "He always wears his work badge on a blue lanyard," she said, her voice shaking. "People trust him because they think he works here." I could see my car now, only 30 feet away. We walked faster, trying to look calm even as my hands trembled. The girl stayed close, half hidden behind me. "He texted the other girls this morning," she said, her voice cracking. "He told them if I ran, he'd make them pay. They're probably getting punished right now because of me." We were almost at my car when someone called out, "Excuse me, ma'am." We turned. A tall, bald man with glasses was walking toward us from the hospital entrance. The girl froze beside me, her breathing quick and shallow. "That's him," she whispered. "That's my foster dad." My blood went cold. As he got closer, I recognized his face and my mind spun. "No, that can't be right, Pablo." My voice came out small and broken. He paused when he saw me, confusion flickering across his face before his eyes dropped to the girl holding my hand. "What are you doing here? And why do you have Madison?" The girl's voice shook. "His real name is Pablo Reeves. He has 6 of us in that house. All the foster paperwork is fake." Pablo took a step closer, his voice calm but tight. "Kate, you don't understand. Madison gets confused. She has behavioral issues. Let me take her home so we can sort this out." He reached for her. "She's not going anywhere with you," I said, stepping between them. His polite tone vanished. "She doesn't need your permission. Madison, get over here. Now." The girl pressed against my back, her face ashen. She realized I knew him. "Get away from us," I snapped, pulling out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. He froze when he saw me dialing. "You're really going to call the police on me?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my thumb hovering over 911. "I don't care that you're my brother." You're trafficking children. Family or not, you're a monster. I hit the call button, my hand trembling. Madison clung to my jacket, whispering that Pablo had cops who covered for him before when other girls tried to escape. The phone rang once. Pablo's face hardened. The fake concern vanished completely. His eyes went flat and cold, like he was looking at a problem he needed to eliminate. The phone rang a second time. Pablo spoke in this calm, controlled voice that made my skin crawl. He said I was making a terrible mistake, that Madison was a troubled kid with a history of lying about her caregivers, that her behavioral issues were all documented in her file. The 911 operator answered and asked what my emergency was. I kept my eyes locked on Pablo while I spoke. There's a trafficking situation in the county hospital parking lot, Section C. I said. Pablo's face went pale when he heard the word trafficking. Madison was still pressed against my side, her whole body trembling. The operator asked me to repeat what I'd said and to stay on the line. Pablo stared at me for a few long seconds, then suddenly turned and walked quickly toward his silver Honda. He didn't run, but his pace was urgent. I watched as he got into his car and pulled out of the parking space. The operator kept asking questions, how many people were involved, whether anyone was hurt. I answered while watching Pablo's car speed toward the exit. Madison whispered, "He's going to hurt the other girls." The operator told me officers were on their way and to stay where I was. 4 minutes later, 2 police cars pulled into the lot, lights flashing, but no sirens. The officers got out and walked toward us. I slipped my phone into my pocket and stood a little taller. Madison moved behind me, gripping the back of my shirt. One officer was older, with gray hair. The other looked younger, maybe 30. The older one asked what was going on, and I explained everything as fast as I could. Madison was a foster kid being trafficked. 6 girls total. My brother, Pablo Reeves, ran the operation. He was a placement coordinator who made everything look legitimate. The younger officer's expression changed when I said Pablo's name. He looked at the older officer and said he knew Pablo Reeves, a respected guy in foster placement. My stomach dropped. The older officer turned to Madison. "Is what she's saying true?" he asked. Madison nodded but didn't speak. Her fingers were gripping my shirt so tightly I could feel her nails through the fabric. The younger officer said they needed to take separate statements. He asked Madison to come with him to the other patrol car. Her breathing quickened. She pressed harder against my back. "She stays with me," I said sharply, "or I'm calling a lawyer right now." Both officers froze. The older one held up his hands. "Ma'am, we're just trying to get clear information." "She's terrified," I told them. "I'm the only person she trusts. You can ask questions with both of us here, or we're not cooperating." The officers exchanged a look. The younger one shrugged. They spent about 20 minutes questioning us in the parking lot. Madison spoke softly, holding my hand the entire time. She told them about the house, the other girls, and the online work. The officers wrote down every detail. Then the older one said they needed to take Madison to the station for a formal interview. "I'm coming with her," I said immediately. "That's not standard procedure," he replied. "I don't care about procedure," I said. Madison identified me as her mother at the hospital. I'm the adult responsible for her, and I'm not letting her go anywhere alone. The younger officer nodded slightly. "It might actually help if you come. She's clearly more comfortable with you." We all got into our cars and drove to the station. The entire drive, I watched Madison in the rearview mirror sitting in the back of the patrol car. She looked so small. At the station, they took us to a plain gray room with a table and chairs. A camera was mounted in the corner. About 10 minutes later, a detective walked in, maybe 40, dark hair, tired eyes. He introduced himself as Detective Santos. His tone was serious, but not harsh. He sat across from us and asked Madison to start from the beginning. Her voice trembled as she spoke. She described all 6 girls, the 12-hour shifts doing online work, the sleeping pills they were forced to take, and the 3 days she'd been locked in the basement. Detective Santos took notes and asked questions, the address of the house, the layout, the girls' names. Madison knew everything. Tiana, 17, the oldest. Lissa, 16. They're the longest. She named the others too. Santos asked about Pablo's schedule, when he left for work, when he came home, whether anyone else visited. Madison answered every question clearly, though her hands kept shaking. The detective leaned back in his chair. His expression shifted from skeptical to deeply concerned. He said this needed to be investigated immediately, then he asked about the online work. Madison hesitated, looking down at the table. We made content, she whispered. For 12 hours every day. She didn't say what kind of content, but I could tell from her face. Pablo collected all the money. He charged them for food, clothes, everything, so they were always in debt, never free. How much money? Santos asked. I don't know, Madison said. He showed us spreadsheets sometimes. Thousands every month. Her whole body was shaking now. Santos stood, left the room, and came back with a cup of water and a blanket. Madison wrapped it around her shoulders. He continued asking about the pills and her allergic reaction. Madison explained how they were forced to take them every night so they'd stay quiet, and how this morning her throat had closed up, forcing Pablo to take her to the hospital. She'd given them a fake name. When she saw me in the waiting room, she took a chance and said I was her mom. Detective Santos nodded, taking notes. He asked about the basement punishment. Madison rolled up her sleeve again, showing the bruise. She said Pablo locked her there for 3 days last week after she tried to call her caseworker. No food, no bathroom, just darkness. Her voice cracked. Santos set his pen down and said he needed to make some calls. When he left, Madison broke down completely, sobbing, shoulders shaking. I held her hand and told her she was safe. She kept apologizing for getting me involved, for ruining my life. I squeezed her hand. You didn't ruin anything. Pablo's the one who should be sorry. Some things are more important than family. She looked up, eyes red and wet. Do you mean that? Yes, I said. I'm not going anywhere. He stopped being my brother the moment he hurt those kids. She let out a shaky breath, new tears falling, but this time, they looked like relief. She leaned against me, her breathing slowly calming. The door opened. Detective Santos came back, holding a folder. His face was serious, but steady. He said officers were already on their way to Pablo's house to check on the other girls. Madison's eyes widened. Right now? Santos nodded. They'll be there in about 15 minutes. Madison covered her mouth, crying and laughing all at once, then froze. He said if I ran, everyone would pay. It's not your fault, I told her, but she just shook her head. Santos said the officers would make sure everyone was safe. 2 slow hours passed. He brought us sandwiches, but Madison barely ate, staring at the door the whole time. I finally texted my ex-husband, Owen, asking if he still knew any lawyers who handled trafficking cases. He called right away. I told him everything. Pablo, Madison, the other girls. He said he'd reach out to someone and call back. 20 minutes later, he did. He had a friend named Jamie, a child advocacy lawyer, who was coming to the station, and he was coming too. About 40 minutes later, they arrived. Jamie was in her 50s, short gray hair, sharp eyes. She introduced herself to Santos and said she understood a minor needed legal protection. I confirmed I'd asked her to come. Jamie sat beside Madison, asked if she was okay with her being there, and Madison said yes. Then Jamie got straight to business, asking about protective custody and where Madison would stay. Santos said normally she'd go back into foster care, but that would be complicated. Jamie's face hardened. Complicated isn't the word. Pablo has access to every placement record. He can find her anywhere. We need emergency housing off the system. Santos nodded grimly and said he'd make some calls, then his phone rang. He answered, and his expression changed while he listened. His jaw tightened as he jotted something on his notepad. Okay, thanks, he said before hanging up. The look on his face told us it was bad news. He said officers had just left Pablo's house. All 6 girls were there, safe, and claimed everything was fine. The house was clean, food stocked, and Pablo had all the proper paperwork. Madison went pale and started shaking, gasping that Pablo made them rehearse what to say and probably warned them right after he left the hospital. Jamie said this was classic institutional trafficking. The abuser hides behind authority, and the victims are too scared to speak. Santos said he believed Madison, but needed solid evidence. Medical records, financial proof, another witness, or physical evidence, since the others denied it and Pablo's credentials were spotless. Owen suggested Madison get a full medical exam to document everything, and Jamie agreed. Santos arranged for a forensic nurse at another hospital where Pablo had no influence. Madison was scared, but she agreed. We drove her to County Hospital, where a nurse explained the exam and documented her injuries. Jamie stayed with her while Owen and I waited outside. My hands were shaking as I finally called my dad to tell him the truth before Pablo could twist it. I told my father I was at the hospital with a teenage girl who had escaped from Pablo's foster house and that Pablo was trafficking children. There was a long silence before he exploded, insisting I was mistaken. He said Pablo would never do something like that and accused Madison of being a manipulative, troubled teen. He demanded I return her to Pablo and stop hurting the family. I tried explaining about the abuse and the forensic exam, but he refused to listen, saying I was ruining Pablo's reputation. He hung up after saying he'd call Pablo himself. I sat there, shaking, realizing my father would always choose Pablo over the truth. About 40 minutes later, Madison came out of the exam room looking pale and exhausted. The nurse told Jamie the findings: sleep deprivation, malnutrition, repetitive strain injuries, and bruises in different healing stages, proof of long-term abuse. The allergic reaction could have killed her if she hadn't reached the hospital in time. Santos called soon after, saying the evidence was enough for an emergency warrant to seize Pablo's computers and records. Since Pablo had access to foster system files, Madison couldn't go back. Jamie decided Madison would stay with her temporarily while she filed for emergency custody. Owen offered to stay with me for safety, and I was grateful Pablo knew where I lived. Around midnight, we reached my apartment. Madison was silent in the back seat, and I kept checking the mirror, terrified Pablo might be following us. I gave Madison some of my old pajamas and set her up in the guest room. She kept thanking me and apologizing for ruining my life, but I told her she had nothing to be sorry for. She was safe now. Owen slept on the couch while I lay awake thinking about the other girls still trapped with Pablo. I couldn't reconcile the brother I grew up with and the man he'd become. Around 7 a.m., Jamie called to say she was filing for emergency guardianship so I could make decisions for Madison. The hearing was in 3 days. Then Detective Santos called. Pablo had already hired a high-profile lawyer claiming Madison had a history of lying and behavioral problems. My heart sank. Madison overheard and told us Pablo had created fake reports on all 6 girls to discredit them if they ever spoke out. Owen suggested reaching out to the other girls. Madison remembered an email one of them, Tiana, had memorized. Using a fake account, we emailed her around 9 a.m., telling her Madison was safe. Hours passed with no reply until 3:15, when an email came from Tiana saying she was at a library computer. She confirmed everything Madison said, the abuse, the online work, and Pablo's threats to report them as runaways. Then the email stopped. Her session must have ended. I forwarded the messages to Detective Santos, who said this was the breakthrough they needed. A second victim met real evidence, and he asked if Tiana could come to the station the next day during lunch when Pablo wouldn't notice. I emailed Tiana again, explaining that Detective Santos wanted to meet her at the station the next day and that we could keep her safe. 20 minutes later, she replied, saying she could come if we gave her the address. She also shared more about the others. Lissa, who'd been there the longest, was too scared to leave, and the younger girls followed her lead. Madison said Pablo had broken Lissa down over time, convincing her she was too damaged to be wanted. I sent everything to Santos, and he called back excited. 2 victims meant they could finally execute the computer seizure warrant. That evening, my mother called, crying. She begged me to stop accusing Pablo, saying he'd shown her official paperwork proving Madison was a liar with a history of false claims. I told her those files were fake, created to silence the girls, but she refused to believe me. She said I was choosing a stranger over my own family and warned I'd lose them all if I didn't stop. Then she hung up. I sat there in shock until Madison came in apologizing again, blaming herself for ruining my family. I told her none of this was her fault. Pablo was to blame. The next day, Tiana arrived at the police station during lunch and gave a full statement matching Madison's story. Santos called afterward, sounding relieved. It was enough to act. That afternoon, police raided Pablo's house, seizing his computers, financial records, and the fake behavioral files. They even found a locked cabinet filled with fabricated reports on all 6 girls. Pablo showed up mid-search, furious, and his lawyer arrived minutes later. That evening, Detective Santos called with an update. His voice was tense. Computer forensics showed Pablo had full control of 6 girls' online accounts, which had generated over $400,000 in 2 years. The girls worked long hours making content for paying subscribers, while Pablo kept all the money and even charged them for food and clothes. He was also collecting foster care payments from the state. Prosecutors were upgrading the charges to human trafficking, fraud, and child exploitation. The next morning, Santos called again. Officers were arresting Pablo. Madison gripped my hand as we listened. He said Pablo faced 6 counts of trafficking and several other charges. Bail was set at $500,000 because he was a flight risk. Later, Santos texted that Pablo was in custody, but his parents were already trying to post bail. My father called soon after, furious. He said I had destroyed Pablo's life with lies and jealousy, insisting his lawyer would prove everything false. When I mentioned the financial records, medical proof, and 2 victims' testimonies, he said it was all misinterpreted and hung up, telling me not to contact them again until I apologized.